Let me tell you something I keep thinking about. The older I get, the more I miss the old days. The ones that somehow all look good now. And it scares me a little because I think I'm slowly turning into my grandfathers. You know, the type, the one who only talk about the past. Things were simpler back then, people were kinder. Now everyone just stares at their phones. I don't know, kids had better manners, for example. And I used to laugh at this. Now I just go quiet because I think I'm starting to agree. And sometimes it just hits me out of nowhere. I open the photos on my phone, I scroll back a few years, and I'm gone. For minutes, sometimes hours. And it really feels like back then life was better, I don't know, brighter, more real. But was it? Is what people call nostalgia? Am I lying to myself? Or, and this is the part I don't like, is my own brain lying to me? So I did what I always do. I started researching, and almost right away I met a man named Johannes Hofer. He's the one who made up the word nostalgia. A long time ago, the end of 1600s, he was a young medical student and he noticed something strange in Swiss soldiers who were far from home. They missed home so much that they got sick, real physical sick. They couldn't sleep, they couldn't eat, they were weak and anxious, and some of them even started seeing things that weren't there. And here's the part that's funny and sad at the same time. For about 200 years, people thought nostalgia was a real illness, something you could catch. Soldiers, sailors, students, anyone alive had pulled away from home. Then slowly it stopped being a sickness, it became just a feeling, and today we think of it as something almost good. A soft, mixed up feeling that can give you life meaning. That reminds you are still you, a little sadness wrapped in something warm. But that made me ask the real question, what actually happens inside your head when nostalgia hits? So I read about the brain, and honestly, for the first time in my life, I was reading about the brain not for school but because I wanted to, and it was kind of beautiful. There's a little part in there called the hippocampus. It even looks like a tiny seahorse, but I think hippocampus is seahorse, but I'm not sure about that. Its job is to hold your memories. Not just what happened, but all the little things around it. Where you were, who sat next to you, what the weather was like, what you felt. Then another part of the brain checks one thing, how much did this memory matter? If it's all about your family, your first love, your friends, some moment that changed you, the feeling comes back strong. But here's what surprised me the most. When you feel nostalgia, the reward part of your brain lights up, the pleasure part, and your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine. And when I saw the word dopamine, I got scared for a second. Like a good child of the internet, I thought, wait, can nostalgia be an addiction? But I think for some people it could be obvious, but I had to kind of properly check what dopamine does. And addiction doesn't come from dopamine itself. It comes from the things that hit you too hard, too often, like cigarettes, social media. They keep whispering again, again, again. Nostalgia isn't like that, because nostalgia isn't only sweet, it's also sad, and the little hit it gives you is very, very small, gentle. And then I learned something that stayed with me. Your memory is not a video. It doesn't just press play. Every time you remember something, your brain builds it again, from scratch, from the pieces it still has, from your mood right now, and from things you only learn later. So the past you see is never really the past, it's a new version, usually prettier one. There's even a lovely name for this, rosy retrospection. Then I got curious. Is there an age when this happens more? Because when I listen to old people like my grandmother or my grandfather, it feels like they live inside their memories. And honestly, maybe it makes sense, because when you're 25, you only have a few years to look back on, right? But when you're 80, you have a whole life, a huge shelf of memories. Of course you want to go back and touch them. And there's something else. We don't remember our lives evenly. Most of our brightest memories come from one short stretch somewhere between 15 and 30. That's the time when everything happens for the first time. Your first freedom, your first job, your first love, the first time you try to figure out who you even are. Later, life gets quieter, and the brain starts going back to those old memories, not for the facts, but for the feeling, for the meaning. I read one idea I can't forget. A psychologist named Erickson said that near the end of life, we all ask one small, huge question. Was it worth it? Did my life mean something? So older people walk through their past again and again, trying to see it as one whole story. And really, when you live that long, you're not going to tell your grandkids what you ate for breakfast, though sometimes it happens, but you'll tell them something that matters. Like, I don't know, I remember back in 68, me and my friends, and the story just goes from there, right? But one question kept following me. What actually makes nostalgia different? Different from just remembering, from missing something, from saying, I missed this. So, plain memory is just a fact, right? I had toast this morning. That's it. When you say, I miss you, a friend, you're home, there's still a little hope in it. Maybe you'll meet again, maybe it can come back. But nostalgia starts somewhere else. It starts the moment you quietly admit that time is over and it's not coming back. You know that old song, the one you played 1,000 times back in your school days? When you hear it now, you don't really miss the song, you miss the person you were when you listened to it. You miss the friends who were there. You miss a feeling you just can't make again. And maybe that's the whole secret. Nostalgia isn't really about going back to past. It's about wanting to feel one more time what you felt back then. And there is a part of the brain that switches on when we do this, a quiet network that runs when we're not busy with anything, when we're just thinking about ourselves, telling our own life story, imagining the future, looking for meaning. Maybe that's why nostalgia always turns into these soft little questions: who was I? What changed in me? And where am I now? And then my mind wandered somewhere else. I started wondering, how did this feeling live in art? Because as people slowly understood the feeling, art changed with it. Because today, let's be honest, nostalgia is a business. Remakes, reboots, and by now what, the fifth Toy Story? And those movies aren't really made for kids, they made for us, the grown-ups. We buy a ticket to go meet the child we used to be. They're really selling one thing. Remember who you were when you first met Woody and Buzz? And we feel it. And for better or worse, it works. But how did we get here? Because this feeling changed as our sense of time changed, right? And I found a few little stages. Way back in ancient times, the first example is Homer's Odyssey, a old story about a man aching to get home, but I haven't read it yet, so I leave it here. Then Middle Ages, almost no nostalgia in art at all, which is interesting because those people didn't look back, they looked up. They cared less about what was lost and more about what was above them. Then Romanticism. And this feels like the birth of the feeling. Look at any painting by Caspar David Friedrich. It's never just a landscape. There's always a person standing still looking into distance. And when you look at it, you feel this strange thing. There's something out there, something I'll never quite reach. Then the Impressionists. Monet painted the same charge over and over dozens of times, not because the charge changed, because the moment changed, the light. And that's the whole point. The moment is beautiful and the moment disappears. Then the 20th century, think of Edward Hopper, Andrew White, empty cafes, the last bit of evening light, lonely rooms, they all seem to whisper the same thing. This second is already leaving. And today? Today is everywhere. We go back to film cameras. We fade our photos on purpose. We fall in love with little pixels from old games. We keep reaching backward. When I started all of this, I didn't like nostalgia. Really. I didn't like that my brain paints the past brighter than it was. I didn't like that a whole industry plays with this soft spot in us and that we fall for it so easily. But the deeper I went, the calmer I got. And somewhere along the way, I just accepted it. This feeling isn't going anywhere, and it's beautiful. Exactly because it's two things at once. The stronger it hits you, the happier and the sadder you feel at the very same time. Though I still hope we can stay a little awake because where there's a strong feeling, there's always someone who wants to use it. But nostalgia gives us too much to be afraid of it. It gives us things to think about. It feeds art. It makes our words a little brighter and our feelings a little deeper. And you know what? I don't mind so much anymore. Turning slowly in my grandfather's, maybe I'll go make some tea.